just as the world has developed an affinity for all things smart, from a phone to homes to full-blown cities, businesses need to jump on that bandwagon too, if they haven't already. In this decade of retail, we will see AI-driven personalization, AR/VR interfaces, and sensor-geared smart environments that could turn today's shopping center into a booming, invisible platform for education, entertainment, digitally enhanced community, and new business models we've never ever imagined. So, make way e-commerce players that have taken advantage of its accessibility, convenience, and online data. Traditional retailers can now have the same kind of access to technologies as they become connected stores of the future. Well, I don't mean to be sassy against the e-commerce retailers. We love you all, but it's just that today's session is all about traditional legacy players making their stores about becoming smarter, integrating IoT and other technologies in it. And joining us on this panel, we have Piyush Kumar Chauhan, the Group CIO of Lulu Group International, Ashish Punjabi, COO of Jackie's Retail, Philip Smith, Group Head of Digital, Kamal Osman Jamjoom, Syed Habib, Director, Business Development, Franchise and E-Commerce at Danube Home, Miroslav Kafajiv, who is the Vice President and General Manager of Honeywell Safety and Productivity Solutions. And special shout out to our sponsors for the day, Honeywell. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Shruti. It is really a privilege and honor to having us in your show. So looking forward for an amazing show.
Same here, Syed. Let me just start with you, Miro, considering you are the tech provider for all the retailers here. So let me start with you. At this point, we're talking about all of these emerging technologies, the smart technologies that are readily available for retailers today. So first, what I'd like to know is an opinion before we start off the panel on how you feel about retailers from this region having fared when it comes to the emerging technology adoption and implementation compared to the rest of the world. Miro, can we start with you?
Yes, sure. So good afternoon, everybody. I just want to give you a perspective and, as Shruti said, an opinion about the retailers in the region and the upcoming technologies. So obviously the pandemic, when it hit, it took basically everybody by complete surprise. Now, it is very important to see what the reaction was from the various retailers. The first thing that happened is they immediately turned towards what do we currently have and what can we use, which was basically turning towards the existing network of shops and outlets and actually immediately converting them in micro-fulfillment centers. And this is where the first step came in for technology. So digitalization and mobility was the trend before, no doubt. But what happened is that now mobility technology and more advanced technology for dealing with spike demand came forward, especially when it came to the fact that you now have also a limitation of how many people you can actually put inside in the warehouse or in the shop or in the fulfillment center. And that's where you could immediately see emerging technologies such as pick-to-light, such as conveyor belts, as well as some of the more advanced technologies such as voice deployed picking. So this is what we saw around the region, and the last 12 to 14 months, they have been quite indicative, so that you understand, on one side, the in-shop purchasing from customers, obviously it went down in retail. But on the other side, the trading through e-commerce, it did not just double, it went 3-4 times above. And you could also see it by the types of devices that the companies were buying. So in end effect, how did the region fare? The region actually fared well. I mean, when you're looking around, you would see that it reinvented itself and it accelerated and leapfrogged forward probably 5 years in terms of development of digital and connected technology.
Great. Thanks for that quick opinion of yours. Piyush, I think I'm going to come to you now. So obviously, we will talk to you about supermarket and hypermarket stores and how exactly would you see them becoming stores of the future? What would make them stores of the future? And just at the back of that, Piyush, what I'd also like to ask you is, what's the thing in Internet of Things that can actually create great value in grocery shopping at this point?
Sure, and I think you have branded us as legacy, which I kind of don't like. Yeah, so we are no longer legacy. I think there is a future for sure for physical stores, and I'm a strong believer that this physical interactions that are there will continue, and I think it will evolve. We are in a phase of transition as we see, and that phase of transition is for the good of the consumer. And I think what the transition will look like is, instead of looking at stores as physical locations where you can dump stuff and keep it for the customers to just walk in and then pick up the stuff and then go back, I think that is something is a legacy behavior that will change. What will change is they will no longer be points of transaction, they will more be points of experience. Yeah, what I mean by that is the stores need to evolve, not just by putting in some geeky technology. Technology for the sake of technology has no meaning. Yeah, I'm a strong believer that it has to be meant in a way that it is usually beneficial to the consumer per se. And what is happening is there are a few consumer trends which are there. The first consumer trend is the sense of immediacy, yeah, which means that the customer wants gratification right then and there. You cannot say that I will enroll you into a very fancy loyalty program and for which you will get rewards maybe 3 months 6 months down the line. Nobody cares. They will throw the card and then walk out of that store immediately if you offer those kind of offerings to them. The second is people don't want generic offerings, and I think you touched upon AI-led personalization. And to me, the first part is mostly solved. People have now realized that point-based loyalty system don't work. People are moving towards more targeted marketing. People are using the dollars instead of giving the standard points to anybody and everybody who walks into the store. They are more moving towards understanding the customer, using customer data, using analytics to understand the customer better. So that thing, I think the retailers have moved significantly ahead in that. Now every retailer has a view of the customer. They are able to derive some customer personas. They are able to do segmentation. They are able to do targeting. The second part is where I think the journey is slightly in the nascent stage, in which how can you personalize the offering in a physical store. Now it is very easy, or it is relatively easy. I will not say very easy, but relatively easily to personalize offerings in an online space, because you know each and every traction, each and every interaction in the online space. But that is where I think the technology has to be blended into the physical space, such that without intruding into the privacy concerns which the customers might have, how can you create a data platform so that they can feed the interaction data to the retailers, and that retailers basically churns that on the real-time basis, converts them into personalized offerings, and basically gives them instant gratification. To me, if these two things are taken care of, you understand the customer behavior and you are able to understand the interaction data and encapsulate that within an offering to offer something unique to the customer. I think this is where the connected store or the digital store or whatever you call it lies for the future. While I said that, it is not very easy to do it. Let me put it as a last point, saying that while it may sound jazzy, it may sound easy, tracking or getting interaction data from the stores is not going to be that easy until you have a huge investment of IoT.
That's exactly what I wanted to get at, Piyush. You've touched it beautifully about real-time data, right? So today, as you've just mentioned, we don't have data insights in time to be reactive. And most verticals of retail certainly need these insights to improve the way they design, deliver, and communicate with the end customer, right? So we need to talk about solutions as well. Like, so you've addressed the problem that there is between the online and the physical space. So what is the solution? There must be ways that retailers have configured at this point to fix it. Philip, can I ask you if you have figured out a way to fix that problem?
Yeah, I think, the timing of the data, in terms of getting it real time or within a short time frame, like a 24-hour period, I think that's actually there for most retailers. Even big retailers, their business intelligence, they generally get it within 24 hours down to the teams. And then with newer software and applications, it's pretty much real time. I think there's two challenges, is kind of consolidating those insights together. That's why you hear a lot of retailers working on data lakes and 360 views of the customer. But that's still only part of the puzzle as well, because you've got to get the communication automated to be able to do it personalized in real time. Now, the way we've managed that, we launched our data lake last year. We've got that 360 view of the customer. We've got the segmentation. But the problem is you might have kind of like 100 segments today of customers that you want to talk to, but from a human point of view, you just can't do that. So we kind of do two things. We layer AI and ML into that so that we can break down into smaller segments. So we've got smaller segments of customers that enable us to make it more personalized. And then with our insider platform that we use, we can actually automate communication to the customer through WhatsApp, through email, SMS, web push, app push. So it's trying to get that automation from end to end. So if there's an action in store, or if there's an action on e-com, that person needs to very quickly fall into your data lake, and then they need to be segmented quickly, and then they need to obviously be communicated to at a certain time that's predefined by our business teams. So, I think the data in terms of timing, I think it's there, for most companies, the data's there quite quickly. It's just trying to consolidate it and then get the communication out in an efficient way that doesn't require too much human interaction.
For sure. So it's one thing to have access to data. It's a totally different thing to use the data. As Piyush has once said, data is not the new oil, it's the new soil. It needs to be nurtured, and that is one thing he always keeps saying. So Ashish, you seem to think that robotics can be one of the key solutions when it comes to converting data insights right then and there, and getting real-time insights using robotics and automation. Apologies for the pun here, but can you tell us how Pepper can add some spice? And for those of you who don't know, Pepper is a robot that a lot of retailers are using. So how is it that Pepper can play a role in retail outlets?
Thank you for that, Shruti. The guys at SoftBank will be very happy with that pun. We talk about legacy retailers. It was more about legacy customers, if you ask me. Because QR codes, self-checkouts, all of these things, mobile payments, all existed for years. The retailers could have adopted it years ago, or they tried to. It was the customers who didn't adopt it. And when we talk about experiential retail was about having that right customer setting. And experiential retail in today's age is about safety, and it's about convenience, and it's about checking out as quickly as possible and efficiently. And I think when we talk about all of this technology, including the robotics in totality, we're talking about that experience with that automation and that mind, but also with the customer acceptance that's over there at this stage. And I think this is where the big changes has really come in the last year is, okay, we maybe had some resistance within retailers, within people who worked for us, but I think the customers were the big turning point. And their ability to engage with the technology, whether it be robotics or anything else. And what that's meant is the retailers have actually now got the access to the data because the customers are willing to participate in this as well. It takes two to tango at the end of the day, or three if there's a robot involved. And this is essentially where the differences come in. Now, once you've got that data in there, through the different touch points, it's a question of where do you start to integrate it? How do you start to use it? So if I take the robotics example, today a robot is like a smartphone. It's a bunch of sensors and a camera and a processor with an operating system. But once you start to design the applications on top of it, it's like a smartphone again, in that it starts to get more intelligent with the more access to information it gets. As it starts to activate the different sensors and get data from the different data points, it can start to make the experience a lot more richer. So today, a lot of the robots have got a camera. So that means technically there's a facial recognition technology that could be enabled. That could link into a CRM system where it understands your purchase patterns, whether online or in the store. It could alert someone that you're in the store and actually call the human to come in and speak to you. Otherwise, you wave your loyalty card at the checkout and then they say, oh, thank you for shopping with us. We didn't realize you were in the store all this time. You could get the personal recommendations because the robot recognizes a lot of that. It speaks the language that you speak because it can be multilingual. So it's a question of now thinking of it and saying, what do you want it to do? And just as you would with a smartphone app, saying, what are the limits of what could be here? And you realize that there are no limits. Technologies like robotics are much the same. And Pepper and a lot of the other robotic platforms all provide that. It's now about saying, how do I enable the applications and what do I want to do and what systems do I want to link to take advantage of this?
That's very interesting, especially about loyalty. And Ashish, we've spoken about this earlier about how, right now retailers are getting loyalties wrong. And Piyush, you touched upon that as well, which is a loyalty card where the reward points can be redeemed 3 months later. I mean, who needs that now when we are looking for real-time solutions? But Syed, let me bring you into the conversation just at the back of what everybody has discussed here. There was an article that I read in New York Times some time back where they were talking about, the experience of passing through the store's turnstile would be similar to entering a subway, with an experience that is more closely akin to shoplifting, with the way things are done at this point, where you go in using a QR code, you scan everything, you pick what you want, and there is no interaction really happening with people. And going back to what Ashish spoke about convenience and how customers' behavior are changing and customers aren't being legacy customers anymore. So with regards to this conversation, first thing what I want to ask you is this sort of behavior, do you deem it to be a good thing or a bad thing for retail? And second, with AR, VR playing such a massive role in home categories especially, are the role of people in store going to be diminished?
First of all, I will start with answering the second question. So I strongly believe that if you will compare the online versus offline, whereas the online gives you the convenience, offline give you the experience. And whereas, and I'm strongly, what Mr. Piyush was also saying, I have second his view that it will not be a legacy retail because retail is going to stay. And most largely, if you will see the physical store in terms of the home segment, largely, because whatever you do, the customer need to have the experience of touch, feel, and the human interaction so that they can understand about the product. But now coming back, but for sure, the overall experience or overall journey of the customer, how they used to behave to buy a product, there is a huge behavioral shift. Like, for example, what happens today if I am to buy a sofa, then I go to a store, I spend 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours browsing the overall store. Then I see whether I want a leather, I want a fabric, or I want a classic, I want a modern. Then I choose multiple, interact with the people. Then after that, I do my final selection. But now what happens? It is a merger of a interactive experience of the online versus offline, where before I go to the store, I do my overall the homework, and where online I can see about the product. And at that time, I do have a lot of different kind of resources like AR or VR, as well as the videos of the product, the video content. From all that, I try to get as much as possible information about the product. And then after that, before I take the final decision, I might go to the store, see the product from all the 360-degree perspective, and then after that, I take a decision. So earlier, whenever I used to go to the store and spend 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours, now that time has reduced to half an hour or reduced to 20 minutes or 30 minutes, where the retailers has to club this along with the online experience, where a customer get a very seamless experience of visiting the store, seeing the product, and after that they go from there. But having said that, this kind of experience will change a behavioral shift on the customer. And another thing I strongly feel that this is not a thing of on and off. Like, today you are something on offline, you just on it that you do on the AR or do the VR. So here you need a complete change in the behavioral pattern of the customer. Then it might happen that after 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, then when customers get much more mature or they got much more experience about this, then the behavioral pattern will change. Now, the answering to your first question, yes, like for example, today we are talking about the robotics, we are talking about shoplifting. But if you will see now, as of now, we have our, everywhere you have a surveillance camera. So why use the camera? The majority of the use is like you try to figure it out that how many customers are coming in, going out, shoplifting and all that. But now these kind of equipments can be used much more retail centric. Like for example, in a store, we put one bedroom or one sofa on the left side of the store. So now instead of the camera showing that how many people are passing by, you can have a machine learning or AI enabled where you can see that how many people are staring at that sofa. Out of that, how many people sit there and they try the comfort level of that sofa. Then whether they move more to the right side or more to the left side. So these are the different kind of data which you can merge together, and based on that, the decisioning power of the company can be much, much more improved. And the third thing, I feel that it is a majority of the company, like all of us who are there, the majority of us, we do have a presence of online and we do have a presence of offline. So there, in that case, the major thing is that you cannot keep the data in silo. So you need to bring all the data merged to one point. And then where it is, I understand that relatively it is easier to implement in the online, but you can get a lot of learning of the online, which you can implement in offline. And after that, you can present it and you can take a better decision.
Right, so Syed, you've definitely mentioned a few points here, right? You spoke about a number of key trends. I think one of the first things you said was about reverse showrooming that is happening essentially.
Yeah.
So what used to happen in the past was, people would go touch and feel an object and then probably buy it online, considering it was considered cheaper. And now there is discovery happening instead of that.